This is Rob Seaman. You are listening to Whole Earth Radio. Today we are kicking off season 2 with a conversation with Renee Manzi, who is the executive director of the Positively Natural Network. And Renee, thanks so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, Rob.
Yeah, thank you. I really thought this was a great way to bridge the gap kind of between the way consumers experience health food and the way those of us who work in the health food business experience health food, right? There's kind of this dual world of the industry and then the people who are just shopping in the aisles of a health food store. And I found that there are a wide range of people that are really kind of interested in how this whole thing works. You know, it's complex, right?
Yes.
But you are, as I said, the executive director of the Positively Natural Network. So could you maybe explain a little bit of what that is?
So what we do is we're a not-for-profit trade show in the industry. And we're an independent trade show. So we work with independent retailers. So we bring independent retailers together with manufacturers and a show every year. We have an education component and one day, and then the next day is the trade show. It's about networking and education mostly, to bring, those people together. A lot of times they'll have, reps that come into their stores or brokers that come into their stores, but they don't really ever get to talk directly with the manufacturers. And this gives them an opportunity to have a direct connection. And that's kind of, we try to bridge that gap.
Yeah, no, that's really good. On that note, I wonder, so like some of the other trade shows, like we just had Natural Products Expo West.
Expo West is the biggest show, I believe, in the whole Western Hemisphere, correct? And I think the other one is Saudi Arabia. And it
wasn't this year in my.
Yeah, it wasn't this year, I think, but I think it was pretty big for considering we just got back from all this last fun 2 years. But no, so we have sister shows too. So we are a Positively Natural Network. We run the Positively Natural Marketplace. Once a year, we do that show. Our sister shows are Soho, which is run by the SENPA Association out of Florida. They're in the Eastern region. And then Maho, which is Mid-Atlantic Health Expo. And they are in Ohio. That one is in July, and then the Soho show is in December. And then next weekend, so the weekend of the 23rd, Soho puts on a Soho Health Fest in Dallas. I'll be at that show too, with my board president. And they're all very similar. We are a full booth show. Soho Expo is also a full booth show, but Maho and Health Fest are more booth and tabletop shows.
Got it. But, the focus is really for retailers, right? So
independent retailers, yes. Like where Expo West would be even Whole Foods and Sprouts and all those guys. All of our shows focus mostly on independent retailers.
Got it. And so all of these regional groups, so your group is not called something NPA, like SENPA is the Southeast NPA, but we should make the point that all of these groups, including the Positively Natural Network, were at one point affiliated with the larger NPA. But
originally, yes, we used to be the NPA Northwest, and our show has been going since, I believe, 1973. And about 4 years ago, when the NPA split, some of the shows split away. We had to change our name. It didn't make sense to use that acronym for another name. So we moved away and we moved into the Positively Natural Network. There were other shows too. So there was the Northwest, there was the Northeast, there was the Southwest, there was many of these shows when they were affiliated with the NPA, but not all of them were able to survive. So SENPA and Maho are our two sister shows, and we're basically the big three that stayed around. And so we kind of work together. We have a different membership. I mean, people are allowed to be members throughout the whole country for any of our associations. And we do have members that are members throughout the whole country. But really, we're the Western region. We used to be just the Northwest. And in 2020, we decided with our board, since there was no more Southern in Southern California or any of the Western region South, we would move out into the entire Western region and open up our membership to all of the indie retailers in that whole region. So it's good that we didn't keep the NPA Northwest or the Northwest at all, because we aren't just the Northwest anymore. So we're the entire Western region. We did move the show out of just the Northwest and into Las Vegas last year.
So that's right. We talked about, I remember back in the day when I was working in the Seattle market, and going to that show. The last time I went to it before I moved to Chicago in 2001 was actually right after 9/11. It was terrible, but was the Seattle show is what we called it. It was Seattle NPA show. So that was the Northwest NPA. So the Positively Natural Network is now obviously a broader tent. You're not just, staying in Pac Northwest, you're going all the way out to Vegas.
That's right. We figured that was a more central area to kind of have it. And people like Vegas, and they kind of have the opportunity to go play in Vegas, or they don't have to play in Vegas, but they can kind of choose what they want to do. We've considered other places like Northern California and Southern California, but those just kind of sometimes feel a little bit far for maybe some of the people that are still up in the Northwest. Our region is Washington, Oregon, California, all the way down to Colorado, Nevada, Arizona. We even have members in Montana, Idaho, and Utah. And we would even consider members in Hawaii if they wanted to come, because they're technically part of the Western region. So anybody's there, everyone's welcome, but those are kind of our main states where we have people. Our board president is out of Colorado. He owns a store in Eastern Colorado. But our board members are across all of the Western region. So we have quite the gamut.
And there are probably people, there are retailers probably coming from all over.
Definitely. Yeah. We have retailers that come from even South Carolina and Florida to come to our show. But our main focus is because they can be members of our sister shows. We don't really, we're fine with them being members. We love that they would be members of all three shows. But we want them to first focus on their regions, and then our regions would come to our shows.
Yep. And I know those regions have done a great job as well. So, that makes a lot of sense. We hear a lot about SINPA, and, in here in the Midwest is
Maho.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a big show out there.
Yeah. Yeah. And, one of the things that I just wonder, we see the shows moving. I think about like Expo East, moving so much over the years. I think whereas Expo West has been consistently in Anaheim just as long as I can remember,
Yeah, for sure. And there was a lot of talk for some time of them actually moving it out of Anaheim into Vegas, because Anaheim didn't have, they were running out of space for people that size of a show to have hotels. But I think Anaheim's really stepped up and put in a lot of new hotels. And from what I've heard, it was part of the reason they did that was specifically for that show, because it's the biggest trade show they have annually. We would love to settle in Las Vegas. We love our venue. It's at the M Resort. It's on Las Vegas Boulevard, but not quite center strip. And in fact, it's not strip much at all. It's out past the airport, but we kind of decided on that on purpose. It's a convention hotel, so it's good for a convention, but people can kind of make their decision. If they're more comfortable just staying on site, doing a little gambling at that show, that kind of thing, not having to leave and go to the strip, they can. Or they can take a 10-minute ride in and go hang out in the strip. So it kind of gives options. So you're not stuck. A lot of people in our industry were kind of like, is Vegas a good option? That's not really what we want to do. And so we kind of found a place that we feel it caters to people that want both sides. So that was our goal.
So, because I just don't really know, but let's say I was an independent retailer and I'm listening to this and I'm saying, well, this sounds pretty good. Like at the end of August, rather than being stuck in my store, doing stock and placing orders and helping customers, all of which are great fun and important things. But let's say they decide they want to take a couple of days, maybe even more than a couple of days, as you kind of explain there. You have some flexibility. This could be an in and out 2-day, work trip, or you could bring the family, you could bring
That's right.
whoever you want and take a little more time. And the M Resort is a great place. So that's a really nice destination to have built into the show, no doubt. But what kind of options in terms of, let's say, if a retailer is interested in taking that, are there packages that speak to that, or how do they book through the M Resort directly?
They book through our website. There's actually a link on our website, positivelynatural.org. You can register for your badges there. You can contact me through that site. They can send me direct email through director@positivelynatural.org. But we haven't really set up any actual packages like that, but we can help them do that. The M is willing to work with us if people are looking for some type of more excursion, that we can help them if they wanted to come in, let's say the weekend before. Our show this year is on Tuesday, Wednesday. Instead of the weekend, we're trying out something different this year. A lot of times independent retailers have trouble finding people to work on the weekends. And so they will work themselves on the weekends and they just can't get away. So we feel that it might be a better option for them to come out on a Tuesday and Thursday when they have a little bit slower time in their stores. So if they wanted to come, if they were able, they could come over the weekend before and stay in Vegas. You can get a reduced rate for being a member of Positively Natural, and then stay at the hotel for a couple days extra. And then everybody's happy. So we can work out anything. If they contact us, we can help them to get to anything. But basically the show itself is on the Tuesday and Wednesday of the week.
Well, on that note, we were talking about some of the other, potential membership advantages and up and coming things. When I went to the Positively Natural dinner at Expo West, you were talking about some of the things that might be, I don't know how many, those things are still in the works or things you could speak to, but other sorts of membership advantages. Because, you were pointing out that this used to be, back, I can remember, 20 some years ago, and even before that, the Deshay formative era, where it was really about advocacy, because we were all living in just dire fear of the industry being shut down. Perhaps we should be still keeping our guard up.
The concern, I think, is still there. We don't, because those bills haven't really happened so much lately. I mean, there's been like the farm bill and things like that have been out there, but we have kind of moved away from that advocacy, which was a big player. I mean, our executive directors and board members were on Capitol Hill all the time back in the 90s and previously in the 80s. That kind of went away a little bit. If there were anything to come up where we needed to be there, we would absolutely be there. But what we do now, I would say, we're trying to help indie retailers in a world where it's very hard for them, because they're dealing with a lot. They're dealing with big, huge chains like Sprouts and Whole Foods, but also they're dealing with internet sales that can really harm brick and mortars. So one thing we advocate for is for people understanding that the indie retailer is really the only retailer left that has people on the floor always. And those people are highly knowledgeable. And one of the ways they get knowledgeable, in our opinion, is by us helping them to get that knowledge from manufacturers, from the scientists in the industry, from all the people that are willing to educate them. And during our show, that's why I said we have that education day. That first day they come in and it's all day education. So they're in education sessions, meal sessions, learning about different things within the industry. And what we're focusing on as a network is helping these indie retailers find what can make them super profitable in an industry that isn't so hospitable to them. So one of the ways that they can do that is one of the things we're focusing on for this year is explaining to them or helping them to learn different ways that they can get creative with their stores to make them more viable and more profitable. So we're doing some education sessions with that. And then you were speaking about benefits. We have the standard benefits. We can help them with their processing. We can help them with their insurance needs. We have, I know you know the Taste for Life magazines. We have a partnership with Taste for Life. They help us with different promotions. And we would eventually maybe like to look into some kind of a membership type of buying program where they can kind of, that's another thing that they kind of struggle with being indies, especially if they're a single store, getting the companies to give them the bigger discounts, which could help them be more viable. So as we grow into the Western region, we are planning on also helping them with some type of like a promotional calendar or something where different companies can come together and give monthly discounts for these members as part of their membership. And we're working out the details on that. That has not come into play. We were working on it earlier in 2020. And then when COVID hit, it kind of made things get a little bit behind. But we're still working on those type of benefits for them. We had to cancel our show in 2020. The 2021 show was a little bit lackluster. It was just hard getting people back. And we actually, our show was in October last year, and that was right when Omicron hit. And so we kind of got tanked because of that. But this year we have, after seeing Expo West and all those people back together face to face, we have a lot of hope that this year is going to be very different. And that's kind of where we're at right now.
So, and I have to ask, since you pointed that out, last year, Omicron, we've been saying for 2 years, we're not out of the woods yet. Even now, I'm confirming educational events for our vendors, for the companies that I work with. There's always a little bit of a caveat, everyone's feeling good. We're getting out there, we're crossing milestones. Our first Expo West post-pandemic, we'll say, but there's this reminder that, it is a dynamic and shifting. To what extent, do you feel like, you have to put out any caveats of because right now we're assuming things just between now and then just get continually better, which I think is, I always believe in positive thinking, but I do think also at some point, I don't want to get, too into philosophizing about pandemics and endemic infection kind of situations, but have you had anyone expressing concerns that, well, we'll wait and see where we are closer to that time? Or
we have had, we've heard that a little bit, but actually we've heard more of the opposite, where people are excited to get back out there. I was a little bit hesitant. I said right before we went into Expo West, like this, whatever happens at Expo West will make or break us, because we'll see what people are ready and willing to go back. And when I walked onto the show floor and I saw 50,000 people 2 feet from each other, talking to each other like it was nothing, maskless, excuse me, I realized, yeah, we're back. So, it didn't take long for, there was, I'm sure you felt that way too when you were walking on the show floor. It was, I don't want to say shocking, because it wasn't shocking. It was just normal. And when it felt normal, I felt like, okay, we're back. Like everything's good. So I think things will progressively get better. They already are. That was in March. We're in April. Numbers still down. But really, what I hear from a lot of people, and what I heard back in like 2021 from a lot of people, is they were worried more that we would have too many restrictions, and they wouldn't want that.
Right.
So it's a balance, right? Because you have the people that aren't worried at all, and you have the people that are still super worried. So the balance, you want to they want both sides to be comfortable, right? With whatever they have what they feel. So we try to just, make them comfortable at coming to us and ask us what we're doing. But we always follow state and local guidelines. There's no issue with any of that stuff. But I think everybody just wants to get back to normal. And in our industry, that's what I'm seeing a lot of. And we're pretty excited because we think that people are going to be like, yeah, we need to get back out there. We have a industry reception every year, hosted by a different company. This year it's Now Foods.
Oh, cool. Yeah, they're from, you're in Illinois.
Yeah, so we're excited. Now Foods is sponsoring that. Blue Bonnet Nutrition is sponsoring our trade show day breakfast seminar. And we're really excited about both of those. And we're still open if people in the industry that watching that they still want to do some of our education sessions. We do have other ones that are still available. I don't know exactly who your audience is, but we have things that are still available, and we would love to have those people come, and we would love to have any retailer come to our show as well.
Yeah, I would love to tell you that my audience was completely made up of independent health food retailers, but I think it really runs the gamut because and it depends on on who I'm talking to and what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But that is one thing that I'm working to do with the podcast, is to focus more on the industry, because there's a million things you could talk about. I'm probably at some level an expert on obscure British invasion blues recordings, but that's not what really people are expecting, me to talk about. So, I mean, during COVID, I kind of did some things that were different, and I was, it was fine. It was the time, and but this kicking off season 2, what I'd really like to do is really, that's why I wanted to have you on, and I really appreciate you're doing this, because it is if I said what's most pressing to me, what is the most important issue in my job and in my work, it would be the continued survival of independent health food retail stores.
Yes.
And I am concerned, as I'm sure you are,
absolutely,
that the evolving marketplace is not necessarily respectful of the sort of what got us here. Folks are more and more, and it's how do you compel people to support local retail? Number one is by showing them the benefit, right? They go in, they get great information, they're their neighbors, they're people they've been getting good health information for years. But when we take them for granted, and I'm afraid this happened a lot during the pandemic, I'll just get it on Amazon. That's or vitamins.org, and I know what impact that can potentially have on small business. Absolutely. Where we've seen folks closing their doors.
Absolutely. And we saw a lot of that. I know of several just off the top of my head, but from what the data shows, I believe in the Western region alone, we lost over 147 stores during the pandemic. And it's a big amount. I mean, granted, there's still 1,500 stores in this region, but that's a lot, and it's a big hit. And so that's why these shows are so important, because they're not like the other shows where there's such an international feel. Like if you go to Expo West, it's great. It's lively. There's parties, there's all the fun stuff, but it's also, there's an international feel. So the people that are coming from different countries, the people that are the heads of big chain stores are the ones that the manufacturer wants to speak to. At our show, it's a lot more family oriented. They send, the manufacturers have their people there that can speak to independent retailers, can educate them, can give them information. But one of the things that sets apart an independent retailer, and as somebody who was a broker for years, somebody who was in sales as a direct rep for years, I can tell you, when I went into Whole Foods and Sprouts, finding people on the floor wasn't easy, right? You know that when you go into stores. And that has only gotten worse. It used to be just Whole Foods for a while was like, yeah, there's nobody on the floor anymore. And then Sprouts was like, oh, where'd everybody go? Now the only places you can really find people on the floor anymore are independent retailers. And I think the value needs to be, they need to understand their value and their worth. And then that will translate to the consumer over time, understanding how important they are. And that's what we want to do with our association, is get that information out there, build up the independent retailers so that they feel like they have a huge voice again. And when they're in an association, it's different because they're no longer singular. If they own a single store and they can only get out information one way, or they can only get educated one way, or they have a person who owns it that's getting older, which is a lot of these stores, and they don't have legacy or succession plans in place. That's where we come in. That's where we can help them to kind of make their children understand the value of that, so that they want to take that on, because it's not always easy. They don't understand what health food stores were when we were kids, right? Like, I grew up in these things. I could tell you story upon story, and it was like a family. And maybe they don't know that now. And that's what we want to get back to. That's what our association aims to do, to kind of help them build up again and feel like they have a place, a very, very important place in our society. And they do, because they educate and they get the information out there and they help people to be well. And that's really important, especially now in our society.
Yeah, no, I think that's so important. And that's, I've been brainstorming, we've got a project in the works with the local health finder app that's still very much evolving, because we're trying to find out, how do you make these things most useful to the consumer and therefore to the store, because it's bridging this gap between how people think about health, how people think about shopping, and bringing those brick and mortar stores into the 21st century and into the current moment. But you kind of touched on it, saying, that you were a direct rep and a broker for years. But, we were talking earlier, you were saying how you got into the industry was kind of a funny story.
Well, it is kind of, I guess, funny. So like I said, I grew up in these health food stores. I can remember, so my mom was, my grandmother was a hypochondriac. And so she was one of those people that if there was something she felt was wrong, she'd be to the doctors, and if the organ could be removed, she would have it removed. It was that kind of thing. And my mom grew up, sitting on hospital beds with her. And she always thought, this is not how I want to live my life. And so as my mom got older and she started having kids, she would go to the doctor and she really wouldn't love kind of the prescriptions that would come out, and she would not feel comfortable. I mean, this was like the 60s and the 70s, when it wasn't cool to do those kind of things. Like, you just listened to your doctor and that was that. By the time I was 8, my mom actually sold Neolife vitamins, if you can remember that name.
Yeah, it was multi-level.
And multi-level marketing in the Wayback Train. Yeah, she sold, and she really didn't sell them to sell them. She wasn't really a salesperson, but what she got the multi-level marketing thing so she could buy them herself. And so at 8 years old, I was taking handfuls of vitamins. I learned to swallow vitamins at that time. I was drinking protein shakes for breakfast when no one was. Like, everyone was having Lucky Charms and all that stuff. I was eating protein shakes. And so I was the weird kid. No, I'm kidding. I wasn't the weird kid. So I kind of grew up in it. And when I got older, I kind of moved away from that. And then I ended up with some health challenges of my own after I was married and had my first son, and kind of found my way back in. And I actually, in 2004, I became a nutritionist. So I'm a clinical nutritionist as well. And I did that for several years, but it's even the indies could tell you, the ones that have nutritionists on board, it's hard to get people to want to pay out of their pockets, right? So I looked for something that I could do still in the industry. And I ended up going to Mother's Market, and I needed to start doing like a part-time job. I was a stay-at-home mom for a lot of years. And I did a part-time job at Mother's Market, and I became their vitamin manager at one of their stores. And I loved it. I loved talking with manufacturers. I loved doing all that fun stuff. I loved the customers. I loved helping people because I felt like I could do what I was kind of meant to do. And then a brokerage poached me out of there, and I did 5 years with them, I believe. We had up to 17, 18 lines at a time, but like some big lines, Nordic Naturals, Dr. Hauschka, Herb Farm, like some of the big guys. I did that for 4 years, and then I got poached again, and I became a direct rep for Country Life. Did that for 3 years, and then Whole Foods kind of put the kibosh. Do you remember when they made that narrative where we weren't allowed in the stores anymore?
Oh, I have some recollection.
Yes, and they took that lovely 5% stocking fee, all that fun stuff that they did to us after Amazon took over. And the companies just started firing their reps, and it happened all across the country. And I ended up losing my job. I was out of work for 10 months. It was getting to that point where, what am I going to do? Like, no one's hiring reps right now. What will I do? And this kind of fell into my lap, and I actually took it on with, I have no idea what this is. I don't know what I mean, I went to Expo West for 12 years, but I didn't know that there were small shows also out there doing pretty much what they do, but on a very small scale. So I kind of had a big learning curve and did this, and I've been doing it for 3 years and I love it. But I would love to, these shows are very important in our industry. And I think it's really important that we save them. When the NPA kind of broke up and a lot of those shows didn't survive, I think it was a real disservice for the indie retailer. And what we want to do, the executive directors of SENPA, Maho, and Positively Natural Network and the board of directors, they really want these shows to survive and thrive, because it's so important for the indie retailer. And going back to how I was a little kid cutting my teeth in these stores, eating, the samples of acerola cherry, as my mom talked to the guy in the health food store. I think it's really important, because kids will grow up healthier, and society will be healthier.
Yeah, no, I think a lot of us have had that kind of unique experience, because it's kind of a niche thing, no matter where you live. Let's say it's more prevalent on the West Coast. There are more health food stores per capita. But even in a store or an area like where I am, I live in Illinois, didn't grow up here, but our regional chain is called Fruitful Yield. It's actually owned by Now Foods. And there's some great books written by the Richards family, just this wonderful American story. I would call it a success story, but it's really, this industry is such a labor of love that, yeah, eventually if you stay in business, you hopefully have some success, but really a lot of it in the old days was just kind of functional, just kind of getting it done. It was like bare bones, not a lot of heavy marketing, even packaging was very minimalistic. And I feel like we've kind of come full circle, only now that aesthetic is sort of being copped by the mass market, where they're trying to look local and homegrown. And I'm like, in an era where people seem to be valuing authenticity, the health food store is really, to me, what I think of, being a kid and just trying to find some cruelty-free shampoo back when I was a kid, like, or whatever it was, it was like this very fringy kind of unique place that has really changed the American marketplace. I mean, look at us now.
Absolutely.
So I really appreciate what you're doing, and I appreciate your talking to me about this today, because I'm hoping that we can all, all of the vested parties, the suppliers, the health food stores, the trade organizations can keep this dialogue going, keep things growing. And, we all have friends that are consumers. We are all consumers ourselves. And just to have this conversation where we remind ourselves that we need to support those independent mom and pops. It's not just how do I feel today? Should I order, online, or should I go to the mass market, big box store? I think we really just have to make it like a part of a mission and just a drive to get people to
and go into the stores, because a lot of times, they're sitting in some strip mall and you've seen it several times. You've never really gone in. Go inside and they'll talk to you, and you'll see that they want you to be part of their family. And I think that is something that maybe people don't know, right? They go to the big box stores and they buy their stuff and, they just live their life and that kind of stuff. But take a minute, like stop into those indie retailers. They want to see you, and not just to sell you vitamins. They want to see you to kind of be part of their family. And that's what sets them apart. And that's what makes me excited to do what I do, knowing that I can help them grow their families. That's what I want to do.
Yep, that is so fantastic. I feel the same way, and that's very well said. I hope we can share some of that with folks and continue, as someone shared it with me once upon a time, it's been kind of like an oral tradition of getting this health information from other human beings rather than a website or a book,
Right.
Just hearing it from other people who've had good experiences.
They come with stories, and stories are the best. So yeah, do it.
Well, thanks so much, Renee. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Rob. Thank you.
I appreciate it. We'll have to do it again sometime, and I hope to see you in Vegas in a few months.
We'll see you in Vegas. It's going to be great. Everyone come. Thanks, Rob. Have a good one.
All right. Thanks, you too.
Bye-bye.